My name is Jeanne Smith, and I'm just an ordinary person. I thought I would talk a little bit about why this is so compelling to me and why I have done some research about this topic. I am an incest survivor. I was sexually abused from the time I was born until I was 12, when my pedophile father lost interest and I was able to make him stop. And then when I was in my 20s, no, my 30s, my early 30s, I sued him for incest. It was one of the first cases for women suing their fathers for incest. They told me that I waited too long, and I tried to challenge the statute of limitations. And I kept working on that issue. They said no, I lost the suit. But what it did was it opened up the topic so that people could talk about it. And the problem with these kinds of sex crimes is that nobody wants to talk about it, and so that's why it keeps happening, this silence. We have this like repression. So I'm just the kind of person that if I see something that I think is unjust or unfair, I tend to get all upset about it and I take action and do things. So I'm not homophobic. I'm very sensitive and I appreciate that people have their sexual preferences, who they want to be with and love. That's beautiful. I think everybody should just love who they love. And my daughter, the way I learned about this transgender thing is I have two daughters in their 30s, and about 10 years ago they started talking about all of these different genders. And non-binary and transgender, and I went along with it because I thought it was about being gay, and so that's people express themselves. So I moved into here at the River City Co-op with my daughter about 5 years ago, and it was just a temporary situation until I could get my place. And they have a transgender policy, and it's a co-op, and you make decisions about things collectively. So we were always having business meetings about doing the dishes and that kind of thing. And before every meeting, we had to go around and give our pronouns. And I went around and I didn't think anything of it. It was like, oh yeah, let's be aware of gender. That's great. And there were people living there who were posing as the opposite sex, and so we had to be careful about that and make them feel included. And I had no problem with this. And then the next thing was that I joined the Iowa City Press Co-op. I'm an artist, and I wanted to learn there and even share what I know and give workshops and that kind of thing. And there's a man there who has a woman's name, and he says that he's transgender. He's totally not changed in any way. He's tall and balding, and he wears men's clothes, and he's a man. But everybody at this group referred to him as she, and when they talked to me about him, they used the word she, and they expected me to say she. And I was very uncomfortable about this, but I thought, well, I don't know anything, what do I know? I can respect it, but it made me feel uncomfortable. But I even let that go, and then I got a letter from the director that was sent to the group that said that they were working with Girls Rock, which is a organization for girls. It's a rock camp. They teach them how to play instruments and that kind of thing. And the director said, well, trans welcome, which meant that she was trying to get this guy also to come and give a presentation to these girls. And I'm like, this doesn't sit right with me somehow. And I thought about it, and I said, should we be teaching girls that if they don't like their body, that they don't have the right body, and that they should go and get surgery and take hormones? What is that? So I asked them about it. I said, what is this? They got really angry with me, and I ended up having to leave the group, and I got called a transphobe. I'm a bigot and a transphobe. So I was like, okay, whatever. And then I started seeing it everywhere. At the Women's Resource and Action Center, there's a big sign on the door that says, people of all genders welcome here. What what does that even mean? And every other group, like at the women's, the rape victims advocacy program, which is someplace, I actually did go there to get services, and they sent me a letter saying that I have to accept transgender people in my group. And I wrote back to them, I said, what does that mean? Some guy who's raised his whole life as a man is going to be in my group and listen to me talk about the personal things about, and I can't even say, wait, let's talk about it? You know, can't we, as a culture, talk about this and see if this is something we all want to do? Anyway, so I started studying it, and the reason why I call this the transgender Procrustean bed, it's about the Greek myth where hapless travelers would come to this inn, and this guy, I guess his name was Procrustean something or other. Anyway, so if you'd lie in the bed, and if you were too long, they'd cut off parts of you so you fit the bed, and if you weren't long enough, then they'd pull you to fit you in the bed. And I really feel like this is what's happening, is that somehow the idea of gender has gotten reified as if it's like a specific physical objective thing, and instead of allowing people to just be in their bodies, you have to change their body to fit an idea, you know, a concept of behavior that changes culturally all over the world as people have different ideas of what appropriate gender behavior is. Okay, so the next one. Okay, so this is the deal. People have XX or XY chromosomes, and that's what makes you a man or a woman, and not what the ideas in your head, and not your behavior. The DSM-5 has all kinds of information about why thinking you're the other sex is a psychological disorder of paraphilia. I've got some information about autogynephilia. Autogynephilia is straight men, heterosexual men, who get sexual stimulation from the idea of imagining themselves as women. Most men who are transgender don't actually go through the surgery. They actually still have their penises. Okay, and this is just me. I really feel like the idea that we're spreading this without letting people talk about it is kind of a sociopathic thing to do. So next one. Okay, so I kind of wanted to have like a discussion and not just have me, giving you facts and figures. So these are the terms, and it's kind of confusing because originally what they had was you were talking about the intersex situation where they changed. Somebody is born with ambiguous genitalia. Right. And these people are sterile. They're not able to have children. So that's one part of this. But intersexual people are not transgender. They're just intersexual. They have a chromosome disorder. But the transgender try to say that because there's intersexual people, that having a gender is a fluid sort of thing. But if you have one of these chromosome disorders, it's a disorder. It's not a choice. It's not part of the spectrum. So originally they came up with this surgery. It was partly they started doing it because of the intersexual thing. They wanted the kids to look normal. So if somebody was born intersexual, then they would, with ambiguous genitalia, then they would do these plastic surgeries to have someone look normal. The transgender or the intersex community now says leave people be. It doesn't help to do this surgery on them. So there's that. And then they use these techniques that they had developed for forcing someone into one sex or the other for homosexual men with internalized homophobia who were very uncomfortable with being male and really wanted to be female. And there are, some of the terms for that is gender dysphoria, and it's a real thing that psychologists will, it's a real thing that you feel uncomfortable in your body as a sex that it is. But this is a psychological problem, and it isn't going to be fixed by changing the outside of a person's body, because you're still you inside. Then what happened was, there were a lot of men who were signing up for it, and it was like male to female, okay? which is basically castration. It isn't, they're not really changing the sex of the person, they're just taking their genitals off. Okay, where was I? Okay, so then during the 90s, when the AIDS thing was happening, a lot of these men wanted to have the surgery, but the surgeons were loath to do the surgeries because of the AIDS. They were afraid of, contamination. So what they had a new thing. These men would say, okay, well, I can't have the surgery, but I am really a woman inside. And that's where the idea of the transgender came, that you didn't actually have to have surgery. Now, the thing about transgender is it includes the cross-dressing paraphilia, autogynephilia, which is an even more severe form of that, and men getting their jollies off by running around in women's clothes. Now what's happening, though, is that especially in the UK, there's been a 4,000% increase in girls, young girls, saying that they're transgender and going for these surgeries. The other thing about that is that most of the boys and girls that they're lining up to have these surgeries are gay or lesbian. If you leave them alone, they'll grow up to be gay or lesbian. So basically, this is gay eugenics. They're like, Okay, the next one. Oh, dysmorphia is the feeling that your body's wrong. Okay, so this is the way it used to be. This is what I think. Lesbian, gay, bisexual. Your kids are fine the way they are. You don't have to be concerned if they're gender non-conforming. That's all right. But when the T came in, they're saying your children are defective and we're here to correct their abnormalities with drugs, clothing, accessories, and multiple surgeries. So next. Roses are red, gender is performative, transitioning children is heteronormative. Next one. Okay, so I'm going to be going into a little bit about the money behind this, why this is suddenly mushroomed like this. So, okay, there's this initiative in Canada. It's called the Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity 123, SOGI 123. And this is an organization, if you go to this link, they've got pages and pages and pages about how to rush your kids into sexual reassignment. And making kids feel, little kids, question about whether their bodies are, whether they're really male or female. And they get a lot of money from these billionaires. What?
George Soros.
Yes. Well, I'll be talking about that. And then here's this other thing. This is a new psychological disorder. It's called rapid onset gender identity disorder. And this is the one where the girls are like, there will be groups of girls in schools all of a sudden just saying we're really boys. And so they call this rapid onset gender identity disorder. Like they're girls all their lives, but actually they're like lesbian girls. And then suddenly they read up a lot of stuff online, and it's called social contagion, Okay, and then here's this other one. This is in the UK. They also get money from they're like front groups who get money to put this in the schools and teach kids that their bodies are, imaginary. Next one. This course gives teachers the confidence to support a young trans person in school, including ideas for best mattresses and creating a trans-inclusive school, blah, 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 blah. So Stonewall UK, which used to be for gays and lesbians, they are totally pushing the transgender thing. If you look at their funding, their transgenders up here and gay and lesbian are here in terms of what they're spending money on. Okay, so there's these are like the money connections. The next one. Another one is this gendered intelligence. So these are the front groups that are getting all of this money. Okay, next one. And this is they're planning this. It is, they have a plan. At first we do this, then we do this, then we do this, and it's about going into schools and yeah. So what's happening in the UK is that it's called the Gender Recognition Act, and back in 2010, they passed a law saying that for transsexual people, once they had a medical certificate and made the transition and lived as the person of the opposite sex for a certain number of years, then they would be considered that they had changed their sex. So what they decided to do then with the Gender Recognition Act is to take all you have to do is go online and press a button, and that changes your sex. So they're trying to pass this, and Stonewall is behind it, and they're also going into the schools and pushing this propaganda into schools. Next one. Okay, so this is actually one of the women who was at the Heritage Foundation talk, and this is what she was talking about, what happened with her family. And this is also what just breaks my heart to see what it's doing to people. This is what the trans cult has cost me, my life and my family. I've left my job in my neighborhood of 16 years. I sold my house, I've lost my friends, I've almost lost my mind. My daughter has rejected her past, she's left her school, she has lost all of her teenage years. She's been taught to hate her body, she's been taught to hate herself. She hates and refuses to hear her beautiful, specially given name. She has flattened her breast, she has been brainwashed. Her older sister blames herself and confides in no one. My husband can hardly stand to talk about any of this and confides in no one. My elderly mother cries. Anyway, so it's really wreaking havoc with parents and children. And what's happening now is that social services will actually take a child out of the home if the parents don't confirm the child's gender identity. So if your boy comes home and says he's a girl and you don't agree with him, the state can come in and take that child away from you and then give them the surgery. Okay, next one.
That's in Canada?
Yeah, it's in Canada, but it's coming here too. Oh, California.
And Oregon.
Yeah.
Oh.
World Professional Association for Transgender Health admits that only 6 to 23% of boys and 12 to 20% of girls treated in gender clinics persist with gender dysphoria into adulthood. But even persisting with an emotional problem doesn't mean you need to have surgery and take hormones for your whole life. Yeah, and they're basically confused kids, and then if I try to say something about it, they accuse me of being homophobic. It's crazy. So next one. Okay, so you had said something about including doctors and shrinks that are against this. So this is McHugh, and he's with the Johns Hopkins, and he was one of the original people who was doing these surgeries at Johns Hopkins. And then he realized that it wasn't such a good thing. So here's what he's got all kinds of accolades and just a very strong scientific background. And so he's one of the guys who say, we need to think about it. So next one. Okay, so this is, you don't have to read all of this, but you can see that these are the names of the people. Jennifer Prisker is James Prisker. He transitioned when he was in his 50s. George Soros. Martine Rothblatt is also a man. He's a billionaire. He's like the most highly paid female executive. So you can see that all of these very wealthy guys are funding these front groups to try to get this into the schools. Okay.
There are other people there that are not on your list.
Yeah.
Because it's not socially acceptable to have them there.
You want to say more?
You are very accurately describing an attack on Western culture. And it comes from a number of directions. Whether you call it Illuminati, whether you call it a Jewish conspiracy, because that's not an appropriate title, but a substantial percentage of the leadership, I don't want to say happens to be Jewish, but
Prisker, Soros, and
it is a tragedy, and Western civilization has been brainwashed for about the last 100 years to accept authority. We have lost the ability to question authority, and as a result, we have listened to the wrong authorities, and we have had this destructive cultural pressure imposed on them. This is not cultural evolution from below. This is cultural transformation from below.
Astroturfing. That's what they call it. Well, the thing is that these guys all have ties to the pharmaceutical industries and medical corporations that will be
There's
back.
money in it as well, yes.
Pritzker has donated hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars to opening these gender clinics. He's based in Chicago. Next one. Okay, this is Jennifer Pritzker. Ah! Yeah, so that's just to show you they're real people. So that's a woman, according to him. Next one. And this is Martin Rothblatt. He's a mega multi-billionaire. He's also behind the transhumanism movement. I don't know if you know what that is. We're fusing people with machines, and he said something about uploading our personalities to the mainframe or some crappy thing like that. He owns Sirius Radio, the satellite radio. That's where he gets his money from. So, you know, he's pushing this. Next one. Okay, so this is what's happening locally. So that's the money part, and I want to so you can see, you know, locally what's happening here, how this money that's being poured into this. I found this in this Go Guide. This is a male homosexual. Not that it's okay to be a male homosexual, but they've really gotten into this like whole corporate, you know, money thing. And so this, I opened this up the other day, and I was just, there's two. There's this one, and then there's another one. Anyway, so you see that this is the doctor. He's one of the doctors at the pediatric LBGT clinic up at UIHC. So he's coming down here, and he's going to talk to parents about how to transition their kids. So basically, this is an opportunity for this doctor to make some money off of some vulnerable kids. Okay, next one. So they have this one in this book, but the next one is, this is the guy. This is his services. Okay? This is what he's doing to kids. This intersex disorders has nothing to do with gender identity. It's not even in this, you know, one is an emotional problem and one is a chromosomal physical problem.
But it's to their social and psychological advantage to intermix the two.
Yeah, well, you confuse them and people think they're the same thing.
You give it a patina of scientific legitimacy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and basically he's a shrink. He's got some clinical experience with disorders of menstruation, so he knows how to give hormones for controlling menstruation. But basically, he's giving kids. He does the ADHD and, you know, medicating kids up the yin yang. That's his idea. Give drugs to kids. Okay, next one. So this is this is the one that they're sending out to the general public. This was the one. The other one was the one that was in the gay men's rag. And this is the one, if you go around town or whatever, this is the one you will see where, oh, a lot of fun, and you'll, okay, this is what I want, you know, yes, okay, let's do this. Let's have the gay kids come together and talk about safe sex. But the thing is about trans health, what that means, it means being cut up and being given hormones. It doesn't mean, because there aren't any there's no trans kids, they're just boys and girls. There's no physical objective trans thing, you know. It's just something that's you know, okay, you don't like your sex role, you don't like your role, fine, let's help you figure out how to deal with that and, you know, get along in the real world and find other people you can connect with. Okay, next one. This was also this is on their website. Okay, be yourself. Yourself is not, you know, don't mutilate yourself. Don't be mutilated. That doesn't make you yourself. You know, this is the total opposite of message that they want to be giving. Okay, next one. Okay, this is Girls Rock. This was the public space one. This is what I was involved with, and I can't even go there anymore because I'm like, no, stop this with the kids. Where does it say? Oh yeah, here. Trans-identified youth. I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that they accept boys who say they're girls, or they're taking care of girls who think they're boys? I don't know. You know, what does that mean? And I can't, I keep writing to them and saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And they're like, oh, you don't understand. You're transphobic. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is the evidence about how bad these drugs are. They cause heart disease. Like I know that I can't take any kind of hormones because of the cancer risk, okay? But they're just randomly giving them to kids. So, can you pull this down a little bit? Because it has the name of the...
I don't know.
Or lift this up, maybe. Anyway, it's called Lupron. And Lupron was originally a drug that was used for cancer treatment for testicular cancer, and also they used it in endometriosis. Yeah, that's good, that's it. And so this is one of the drugs that they give to the kids who come in and say, oh, I think I'm a boy. And they say, okay, here, we're going to whap you, we're going to give you this puberty blocker, it'll keep your body from developing. So what it does is it causes bone deformation. She lost her joints, her jaw joint and her back. Her teeth are falling out. And so they're giving this, there's no long-term testing because why? You couldn't just like randomly test kids with this poison, so there's no long-term studies, but everything that's coming up is that it's really bad for children's bodies. And it also affects brain development, it keeps your brain from developing. It's really crazy, it's just... Okay, next one. So this is, some people are trying to talk back, and so online I pick up these things, and this is the social, the contagion thing. They're telling kids that they could be born in the wrong body. And so if you're a kid and you're a little girl and you find, you're attracted, you want to be hugging your girlfriend, right? But your culture's telling you no, that girls aren't supposed to like to hug other girls. So they feel like they're different, and then as a remedy, they're past this thing that your body is indeterminate. Okay, next one. Okay, this is hard. When I started looking at the pictures of what they are actually doing to kids, these are 3 middle schoolers. This is in my blog, I got this story. They're like in groups declaring that they're transgender and then going and they're giving them hormones and puberty blockers. Here's another group of kids. These are all girls who had their breasts chopped off. And this is what it looks like to chop off a girl who's just going through puberty. Okay, next one. And then this is what they have to do. This is when they put, they take the meat off of your arm and the skin off of your arm and then some more out of your leg so that they can fashion this penis. And then and it doesn't work, it's like permanently like that. And you can't really, there's no sexual feeling there at all because it's all removed. So this is the horror that they're trying to sell to kids. But you won't see this. They're just like, oh, it's so much fun, unicorns and teddy bears, rainbows and lollipops. Next one.
And they can't have orgasms because
No.
it's been mutilated.
And they're sterilized. You can't have children.
They're sterilized.
Okay, let's see. So I've got some of these flyers. So these are some of the problems. Sterilization, pubertal malfunction, you don't go through puberty. Sexual dysfunction, bone brittleness, chest pain, depression, seizures, liver damage, pathway to castration, double mastectomy, hysterectomy, plastic surgery again and again and again through their lives. Plus they have to constantly be on these hormones and be monitored, and then all of the other things that can happen, necrosis, incontinence. Okay, so they're not putting that in here, saying. Okay, next one. So I want to just go through town and blast through the whole town with these. Okay, next one. Oh, this was a video that I didn't get this on here. This is the talk that the woman gave at the Heritage Foundation on the social contagion thing. We could maybe watch it afterwards if we still have time. You can just go to that. Yeah, that's the Bree Jauntree. But we won't watch that right now. Let's just go through this. Okay. This is another thing that's happening. The Midwives Association of North America. Some of the Pritzker Foundation had people put on the MANA, American Midwives Association, who pushed this transgender thing, and they got rid of all of the words that said mother or woman, and they say pregnant person, birthing person. They want to take woman out of birthing. So this is a woman. And this woman is on a fuck ton of hormones, excuse me, which are going to affect this baby that's inside of her, okay? This is child abuse. This is a man. He's also on a whole lot of hormones. And this is what's being, oh, this is just lovely, you know. This is what trans looks like. Okay, next one. Like the heck with the next generation. Okay, this is Women's Place UK. These are the ladies over in the UK who are fighting the Gender Recognition Act. They're trying to get them to say, hey, wait a minute, you know, what about young girls in locker rooms? We don't want to just have men waltzing in, you know, putting on a wig and lipstick and saying that they're, you know, they're women. So what they're saying is they're against all forms of discrimination. And then they have, these are the 5 things. They want evidence-based discussion, and that's being repressed. Women-only spaces are in prisons, shelters, in hospitals. You can't say who you want to have take care of you. And okay, so these women are trying to fight back against that, and it's hard because they don't get any money, and then the people on, you know, the Stonewall and Gender Intelligence have, you know, they're just getting gobs of money. Next one.
Are you going to talk about the Equality Act?
Yeah, I guess that's the United States. Actually, you know a little bit about the Equality Act, right? You've been looking into it.
Yeah, I started looking at that after we knew you were coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does pretty much what Obama's ruling in the 2016 does, which says every place that sex occurs in the law of an educational or other institution receiving federal funds will now be changed from sex to gender identity.
Yep, that's it.
And I thought the woman in the Heritage Foundation forum who was talking about that law said that's not in there. She said they sued.
Oh, it's still out there. They're still talking about it. They haven't passed it as law. They took what used to be the Equal Rights Amendment and the Civil Rights Act, and they changed all of that language, and it's still out there. The Democrats are really behind it and trying to get it passed. It hasn't passed into law yet.
But I'm just saying it's not, what Obama wrote is not there anymore.
No,
She
well,
said that quite
his
clearly.
ruling is no longer in force
What
because
is his
Trump
ruling?
rescinded it.
Yeah.
But now there is a federal legislation that is called the Equality Act.
Right,
That
so-
has this in it, I think, at least what I saw online had that.
Right,
That's
I'm
where I read
not
that.
disputing that, I'm just saying, just to clarify what his guideline was. They sued, according to that woman, they sued, and that's not.
Yeah, there was a
guideline.
case in Virginia, a girl who said she was a boy, just tried to sue the school, ACLU was behind it, and then they changed, they said she didn't get to do it, and they rescinded his law, but now they're doing the Equality Act.
Yeah, the way I understood what they said was that this brave young black woman was trying to stand up for her right to not be showering
She
with
did talk- yeah,
physical
she said
males.
that, yeah.
And then Trump rescinded Obama's ruling, so their case was moot.
Oh, maybe I missed that.
That's
part.
what
Yeah,
the way
you're
I
probably
understood it.
right. Okay, well, anyway, sorry.
Okay, I think the next one, and we might be close to the end.
I think we are. I pressed down and it still says 32 of 32.
Okay, yeah, that's the end. I kind of wanted to end on an upbeat note to say that people are, women and men too are, saying, hey, let's have a discussion about this. Let's talk about how this is going to affect us. So I have some stuff here that you can take. You can look at these books that I got out of the library. I guess I went to the library the other day and I typed in transgender in the catalog, and there were 226 titles for transgender, and I typed in detransition, and then the only one I came up with was this one. So I was talking to
And they were
someone.
mostly children.
What?
There were, a lot of them were children.
Yeah, I got the ones that were directed toward children. These here. Becoming ally to the gender expansive child. Gender expansive. Okay, so that's my presentation. The questions, discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I just watched the Heritage Foundation and all this, and I think this is a really important discussion, and I think a lot of your points are really important. And I have never thought that the surgery was a good idea. I mean, something that can't be reversed like that, and of course the hormones are dangerous. And I'm really suspicious of what all these people pouring money into this cause are getting out of it. And I'm glad you brought that up. But I want to
I'll
just
take
tell
care of that,
one,
yeah. It's confusing.
one little story from my life back in the 1970s, I guess this would have been. I was living in New York City, and I and a bunch of lesbians were trying to get the civil rights law passed. We couldn't even get it out of committee. And so we did a sit-in in the city council and ended up in jail. And when we were there, well, first let me tell you, we already knew this woman, Marcia Johnson, and she actually eventually became a transgender activist. But there weren't transgender activists around then. And she was, we just knew her. She was always dressed in women's clothes, and she was a transgender. So we go into the jail, and she says, oh, what are you respectable queers doing here? And it never once occurred to me, and I would say this still, that she wasn't an extremely persecuted person. And this is my objection both to the Heritage Foundation and a lot of this material, is it tries to discredit the fact that that is a real kind of oppression, and there really are, and this movement has gotten everything all distorted, not always. I mean, I have grandchildren, I know young people and freshmen in high school who are having this conversation in a really good way. It's a questioning of stereotypes and male-female stereotypes, and with this fluid thing, and we have these other choices. But it doesn't, for me, it doesn't work to leave that out, that that there are people who are genuinely transgender and they need to have rights.
What does that mean?
It means,
But it's a psychological, it's not a physical thing.
but I for years, being around the gay LGBT community, before it was T, okay, this is a big discussion. What's it mean to be female? What's it mean to be male? And what you have to do is make it easier for a biological male to feel as feminine as he wants, for a biological female to feel as feminine and masculine as she wants. Then in the gay community, you have butches and you have femmes, so then you have the same issue, have to make it, But that is not everybody. There is also somebody who just feels like they're not a man.
But to me, the line is the surgery. So
That's part
where you're sucked into what all the pharmaceuticals are pushing on people. And
I totally agree with that. I don't have a problem getting rid of that.
Anybody altering their bodies for I mean, I don't even like the faceless and stuff, but I mean, just sexually, where they're sterile, where they don't have an orgasm, and they're pushing this idea of surgery on children.
Right, and so I'm not.
To me, that's what I'm so.
I'm totally in agreement with that. I just don't think it's good to leave
Well,
out that
it's
this is another kind of oppression. It's not
But
the
it's the
oppression.
same kind of oppression as anybody that has any kind of emotional problem faces. Maybe it's a little bit more because it's a sexual thing, and so there's like more of like mana, that it's more taboo. But it's still about having an emotional problem. It doesn't mean that the person is literally the other sex or that they were born in the wrong body. That's the only thing I want to say, is that you can't be born into the wrong body. If you have an emotional problem, you should get support, but you can't be saying that because you feel like you are in the wrong body, that the whole sexual thing is wrong and that sex is indeterminate and you don't know what sex is. They talk about people being assigned a sex at birth, and that's not what happens. The sex is observed, it's not assigned. You might be stretching that, you might say, well, you're assigned a gender role based on the fact that it's observed that you
Based
have
on
a
the fact
penis.
that your external genitalia look that way.
What?
You're assigned a sexual role because your external genitalia at birth look in one of two categories. And in the 1.3 of 1% who don't, the parents and surgeons get together and say, what is the best thing we can do for this child? I've been there
And then I guess
as an anesthesiologist.
what was I going to say about that?
You're talking about oppression.
Yeah, oppression. I guess I wish as a culture that we could make that distinction and not have the gender and sex be the same word, the same thing, because sex is your physical body and that's never going to change. Gender is
No admittance allowed.
Gender is the social role, your feelings, your emotions. It's not a physical thing.
Wouldn't argue that. I mean, I think this movement has become really distorted. I'm just saying it doesn't mean that there's no such thing as a transgender person who's horribly persecuted.
Right, that's
Yeah,
gender dysphoria.
That's all I'm saying.
Right,
But
that's
it's
true.
not necessarily.
So what would be the best way to handle that then? What would
Well,
you like to see
if
happen?
somebody is what is missing, it seems to me, is a discussion where the people on both sides of that can talk about their situation and say what would be better, what would be a compromise we could come up with. Single occupancy bathrooms and whatever works for both, but I know that there are transgender people and there are women, I'm one of them, who was abused sexually, who want both the power situation of women to be recognized and want transgender profession to be recognized. And I don't, it makes me nervous when all this money is pouring into turning these two groups against each other.
Right.
So that's my point.
Yes,
But
I see.
most of what you say, I agree with.
What we are seeing today is a reproduction of the Salem witch trials, but the Salem witch trials was the spontaneous creation of adolescent and pre-adolescent girls in a particular town. What you're seeing here is the manipulation of a culture from above by people who want to manipulate it to create a totally aberrant culture and society. And if you do not recognize this as an organized operation, you're going to be chopping at the limbs of the tree rather than chopping at the trunk of the tree. Now I hope that you guys have a solution, but I think if you do not recognize the tree is being financed, and it's being financed with people who don't like individualism.
It isn't part of liberty issue. I mean, as a parent, to have the state come in and say, well, your child thinks that they are a different gender than what they were born with, so we're gonna take your child and,
I have this is from a group called Transgender Stephanie Arise Davies. And in response to this, the SOGI 123 sexual orientation and sexual identity, she came up with this school packet. And so I thought maybe if you wanted to look at this, because they come up with a plan, different, how to support gender non-conforming kids. So you could take that with you, because I got it on the thing.
Oh, this is a whole article?
It's actually a packet for schools to teach about sexual orientation and gender identity from a feminist standpoint.
Thank you.
So when I was talking to people about this, it seemed one of the issues that was most important was that both people that were transgender and women could both be safe in whatever space they're in. So the only thing I could, and it seems as if the Equality Act would not allow that. But I wonder if there would be a way to have the transgender people, if they suffer harm, to have the punishment be the same as it is in hate categories. That was the only thing I could think of that might give some protection to transgender people.
It'd
That
be
would
nice
be
if they
a
would
common- the common
expand
ground,
that to
but
women
not-
too, and have violence against women be a hate crime.
And I think that, I do think it's really important to be aware of the powers that are kind of hidden, you don't always see them, that are controlling what happens. And I think, like when I see all this stuff about this sort of distortion of the issues around gender identity and stuff, when there's some really important ones underneath that, but I think the whole issue, I mean, my opinion is the whole issue of violence against women is not recognized or dealt with or talked about in the media. I mean, this country is full of not only soldiers returning, even though nobody talks about them or looks at them, who have terrible PTSD. The country is full of women who have PTSD. And that's like underneath all of this other crazy stuff that's going on. It's the same, like it's not really looked at what's happened to transgender people. It's not really looking at what happened to women who are, damaged in all sorts of ways or killed because they're women. And so somebody up there gets something out of kind of having those issues all erased. That's the way it feels to me. I don't trust it.
Well, we wouldn't want to have to spend money on that.
Yeah. Oh, and dealing with
mean-
violence against women, oh, God,
Right,
no.
and we worked to build institutions that would help to address PTSD and amongst women who had been hurt, that were meant to intervene in situations where women might be hurt. But the funding for those sorts of things, when relying on government funding, has been slashed and cut and slashed and cut. And one thing that I was thinking about when I got the information about this, I'm so sorry that I missed your presentation, is knowing that the rates of violence against transgender individuals are very, very, very high, even murder rates. So that's a concern of mine,
Yeah.
as it is for women and children. Children are not protected on hardly any level.
well, I think one of the things you're saying is children are children. I mean, what is the rush?
Yeah,
You know, let
really.
a child grow up and become an adult and make their own decisions for their life.
Yeah, that's where I came into this, when I realized kids were being harmed.
Yeah, that's unacceptable.
Well, if it were my children, I would not want. I would to encourage them not to have a dramatic intervention until they're grown up or older. So I would try to do my best parenting. I don't have children, but I've worked with children, so. Children not protected on so many levels. It's hard.
And I would say, I really do know children who are having this discussion without their feeling manipulated. I mean, young kids.
And their parents are being moved by what they think is public pressure to be open and receptive to biological nonsense.
So, but the children themselves, I can't say, I don't have school-age children anymore, but the children that I have access to see this as giving them more options. I don't hear anybody talking about having surgery, but, like I know several women whose children see themselves as non-binary, and then they're talking about having a different pronoun. Oh, we don't have to say he or she, so then they have to educate me. How do I call somebody they? Well, but I don't think it's a bad thing. It's like there's those kind of issues that are underlying all this weird distorted stuff.
Wouldn't it be better if we actually changed society so that we didn't have to have this idea of non-binary? If men and women were equal, if women were free, why would we want to switch back and forth, And the thing is that if you're a man, if you're a boy, you're still going to be raised with male privilege. That's not going to go away just because you say you want to be called she. Like this guy, he's an adult man. He was raised with white male privilege, and that's not going to go away just because he calls himself by a female name, And it doesn't change. He's pantomiming my oppression. He's saying that, he can just say that he's a woman, and that makes him exactly like me, that he's literally a female. And that, if we're competing for grants for, an arts thing for women, then he can apply for that and get that because he says he's a woman, and that doesn't create equality. That just gives men more, to take more away from women. So.
Are you talking
And it's happened with sports. Men are taking over women's sports. Did you read about Martina Navratilova? She said, "Wait a minute, hold on with the transgender thing." And she's the guy. She was with Renee Richards. She's totally down with the transsexual thing, but she says men can't just come into women's sports and say they're a woman and start competing like they're a woman. It's just not going to work. So it doesn't make us more equal to pretend that, just to pretend that the sexes are interchangeable, or that your sex is something that you go buy from a doctor,
We don't have equality, period, so.
No.
Of course, that would be the goal as far as I'm concerned. But are you talking about specific instances in the examples you just gave of the art?
Well, I don't, I'd have to look it up, but I could find you. There's, the men are coming into women's sports. It's Fallon Fox, who's a boxer. He's a man who identifies as a woman, and he almost killed a woman in the boxing ring. There's Rachel McKinnon. He just won the bicycle thing, He's a man. He's not changed in any way. And women's colleges are no longer just for women. You just have to say you can say you're a woman. You don't have to do anything. You can just waltz right in,
So explain the Title IX thing, how
Yeah.
it's affecting all the rights that women work for.
Right. We can't have separate spaces. Like the rape victims advocacy is run by a man. the Adam Robinson is the head of it. And in shelters, you know, battered women shelters, they can let any man in. And this is the law. They can let any man in. All he has to do is say, I'm female, and they have to let him in with these women who've been battered. And women are not allowed to set a boundary. We're not allowed anymore to say, no, this is my space, you can't come here. You know, I'm sorry you have issues.
I understand you. I guess I want to see the data. I just have a feeling that this isn't like really widespread. And I'm not saying that these individual situations, somebody boxing against a male, isn't important. But in terms of the data, how widespread it is.
What do you mean, how widespread what is?
Well, for example, I was
How many men are actually saying they're women in order to get stuff? Well, okay, so what's happening is that there's a lot of crimes being committed by men who say they're women, and the press records them as women. And so the crime statistics are being skewed because men who say they are women are being recorded as women in the crime statistics. And it really, I have been looking at it, there's hundreds and hundreds of examples of this.
And then on the other, I mean, if you have hundreds and hundreds of examples, I'd like to see the data.
And what difference would it make?
Well, any situation where there's unequalness is of import, yes. But I see this fear, and I watched the video of the panel that you forwarded to me, and the people on the panel were saying, gave 6 examples of children, and which, you know, need to be documented. They were narratives of 6 children who had been in oppressive situations, which sounded, you know, horrible. In terms of having the state intervene, as you suggested. And that's one thing. And then another individual on the panel talked about how widespread the medicalization and treatments being offered are. But that's not data.
So you can Google that and get it.
Well, maybe if the data is being collected. I mean, I am wary of sort of, I don't mean this to apply to you, but generating a lot of fear around something that may or may not be a very substantial issue. I personally don't feel threatened as a lesbian by transgender individuals. I have a friend who is transgender who identifies as a lesbian, and that doesn't bother me in the least. She's gone through the whole process. She's not really a man anymore, and I respect her autonomy and her choice. Is it a choice I've made? No, but I am sure there are instances that you have described and that were described on the panel. There are abusers in every group. And I have no doubt that there are men who might say they identify as lesbians who sexually assault someone. Because we live in a really twisted culture. And there's a lot of violence. But how widespread is that? You know, we have to stop that wherever we can. I did want to say something about gender identity and fluidity. It's more complicated. I mean, biology isn't just as simple as there is a male and there is
Yeah,
female.
it is that.
No, it's really not.
Yeah,
There are
it is.
people with
But it doesn't change your behavior, it doesn't change your sex.
Wait.
There's X, X, and
Can
Let
X,
her finish
Y.
her sentence, please,
Can I
because I'm
finish?
interested in this.
this is something I've been involved with for some time too, with people that know a great deal more about it than I do, scientists. We all have different hormone levels. We all people have different organs, not just male and female. Some people have both male and female organs. Our
Very
brains are
few.
wired differently.
Very,
Uh-huh.
very few.
Yeah, well, and so you say that is very, very few, but how many of us are there? All with different hormone levels. I mean, that's a large population. None of us are the same. And so there's variation. There is variation. And there are many, many cultures other than ours who accept a third gender.
Really, which one?
Native American,
Native American,
Asian,
big
I
time
get
there.
information about
Quietly.
that too.
quietly living, amongst
The
their
ones that
people.
have the third gender are the ones that are the most patriarchal, so it's a reaction against patriarchy. So that some of the men are allowed to be more feminine. In the more egalitarian indigenous cultures, they don't have that because they don't need to have it. So this transgender thing is more of a reaction against very male, warlike type cultures. So
I don't
there's
think
that.
that's true.
Well, I can get the information to you. I've been reading about that and studying about that too.
Just from my point of view, what I've read about many Native American cultures is those people in the middle are often seen as very sacred. And these are women identified cultures. And
I
so
guess
it's not, so it's probably both, but I'm saying it's not always that.
The thing is, if you really believe that sex is not that, how do I say this? Your sex body, you're always XX or XY, and if you're intersexual, which is a tiny, tiny minority of people, that has nothing to do with being transgender. That's a biological defect that some people are born with, okay? But an XX person is never going to be an XY person, an XY person is never going to be XX. And all of the rest of it is social and cultural and behavioral, it's not biological. And that, I guess you didn't see my whole thing about
No, I didn't, I'm sorry.
that
I tried to get away
the
with it.
intersex thing is being used as a wedge.
Mhm.
And and we're saying that gender is not sex, gender is learned behavior. And of course, I want everybody to express their whole beautiful self in any way that they want. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that this whole thing about trying to make it so that men and women are, they're just some fuzzy, you can wake up one day and suddenly you're a woman or a man, and teaching children that their bodies, that they can change their gender at will, they change their physical body at will, when they're just learning about what it is, to be a man or a woman in this culture.
Well, the
I'm
point
just
is,
saying,
I think
I'm
we're
just
talking
saying
about
it's not that
children.
simple.
I think we're talking about children,
Okay.
and I think there's
No, we're
way too
talking
much
about children.
sexualization of children.
Oh,
Used to be when I was growing up, I'm so old, you had 2 weeks of biology class in high
Thank you.
school. There wasn't all this push to sexualize children and introduce them to their sexuality when they were in kindergarten. They just let them be children and enjoy their lives. And
I think it's a complicated issue that needs discussion, and I'm
Yes,
glad
we
we're
need
doing
to
it.
talk about it, and
Yeah.
it's very emotional. Obviously, I'm getting emotional and trying not to.